Welcome to Interior Analysis. I am your host for this one, Jelani T. Kelly.
I'm Evan Westman.
I'm David Jones.
And today, I know we're not even in the month of October anymore, but
You don't gotta tell him that.
we had a theme to keep up with us each picking a horror movie to bring to the show. So this episode is my choice, Final Destination 3. Uh, so initial stuff. I've never fully seen a Final Destination movie before this. This is the first experience I had with it. My dad called my brother and I into the kitchen. I think he was cooking and he was watching a movie on his laptop, and it was Final Destination 2. And he explained the premise to us and showed us like a couple of deaths. I think one specifically, it was like a barbed wire thing shot out and wrapped around some dude's torso, and he got split in half by it. It was wild, and it made me paranoid back then. But it's like, for whatever reason, these movies specifically, horror in general, but these movies specifically, it's kind of like watching a car crash. I've never seen a car crash, but it's really hard to look away. So back then, I also had the irrational fear of, when I watch a horror movie, whatever monster is in the movie is just going to come after me because I know about it now. And it didn't help that with this, like, it wasn't something you could see, hear, or really sense would come after you. And that's kind of my topic, and we'll get into that. The paranoia whenever I see something from this franchise of movies only lasts so long now, and it's definitely gotten shorter the older I've gotten. But when I was younger and saw any deaths from these movies, I was paranoid for a good week at the very least. Careful with everything I did. And I also managed to see the deaths from Final Destination, the fourth one, without fully seeing the movie. I won't really explain why, but I remember seeing a few from that. Like, specifically, I remember the escalator one, even though I think that was a premonition, and like the tire one at the very beginning. I want you guys to also speak before I talk about the rest of my initial things too, because I'll be shouting out a YouTube channel.
David, you want to go?
Sure. So Final Destination 3 was the first one I saw. My brother introduced me to it, and then I went and watched all of them up to that point, which was just 1 and 2. I still haven't seen 4 or 5. 2 is by and away the best one, and it's the most like impactful, and it still, I think, sticks with people the most to this day, where everyone who's seen it is like, yeah, if I drive behind a truck and it has pipes
Log truck.
or logs, I'm moving because that's just like so traumatizing. And I still feel that way. This though, because I was really excited, because as a kid I used to go between 2 and 3 about which one I liked more. 1 was always kind of boring, and then I was like, okay, let's see it now. And I did 2 for like that 31 nights of Halloween thing, and I was like, okay, this is good. And then Jelani picked 3, so I was like, awesome, I get to see 3 now. And 3 isn't as good, but it's so much campier and so much more fun, and like it's just jokes galore, and I'm just like, this is a great time. So I had a lot. It was very entertaining. I was like cry laughing when she busted out that picture of Abe Lincoln, and she was like, but look at Abe Lincoln. And then she was like, and then look, the Twin Towers. I literally wept. I was crying. I was watching with my friend, and we had to pause. We were hyperventilating. We were like, what is this movie? Like, what is the logic right now? How are we at this dude's funeral or this girl's funeral? And she's like, but wait, Abe Lincoln.
Also, isn't like the line going through his hair? Like, I feel like it wasn't even his head. She's like, that's where he got shot. I'm like, I don't think that would have killed him then. Just would have, like, it's like the Bugs Bunny thing where it parts his hair right down the
literally.
middle.
So yeah, that was, and I still, whenever I ride a roller coaster, I think about this movie. If I go to the gym and I see the shoulder machine, I think about this movie. If I drive by any shopping center with a tanning salon, I think about this movie. So it just lives in me.
How are those even still in business? Do people tan still?
Shockingly. But I guess
No.
people still smoke, right?
Smoking,
Smoking's
ironically, isn't
addictive, though.
it's not one of the deaths in these movies. You don't. Nobody dies from smoking right away.
That's true. That's the second one, kind of.
Wait,
That
The
happens.
guy
in it?
is like, there's
that
like a
happens in this?
fire.
From smoking? I don't remember. I should have. I was just
He's like
starting to watch
he is
the
a
kill
smoker,
count.
and then he leaves like the gas on in his apartment, and then he tries to get out through the window, and then he slides, and the whatever it's called, like ladder thing comes down into his eyes.
Oh God. Oh, I think I remember that. Kind of. I was just starting watching the second movie Kill Count before I logged on. And I saw you guys were here. So yeah.
David, are you done with your reactions there? Okay. So I guess I'm coming in knowing the least because I had heard of this, but I think the only times I'd heard any details was like, Jelani, I think you've brought it up a couple times. So I've just kind of like gotten a tiny impression from that. Like, truly, I know more about the Smash Bros. Stage Final Destination than this movie or any of them. What?
That's not okay.
I think there's worse things to know about. Again, I don't know much about that either. I just know it's where you fight the big hand boss at the end, the master hand. So I was coming in like from what I'd heard, what little I knew, just like ratings, I was expecting trash, and there is some trash here, but I was honestly pretty surprised how compelled I was by this. Like, I thought at best this was going to be 2.5 stars out of 5, and I gave it 3. So, I think it helps that this was the first one in the franchise because I kind of had that hook of like, I don't really know any of what's going on. And I imagine a lot of people who had seen at least one of the previous ones had like, at least knew like the basic premise of it. I like that it kills everyone off at the end. I don't really know why, but somehow that feels right for this movie. Instead of having them survive. All of them do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Almost all. The first one ends with Carter the Dick dying. I feel like that's he's called a dick in that movie so much. I just added that on as his nickname. But it ends with him getting. They don't show it. It cut to black right before he's supposed to get hit by like a giant sign, and the other two are still living. And then in 2, isn't old boy the main character? He's killed off screen prior to the events of 2, but Clear Rivers is still alive and
she shows up.
Yeah, she does the smart thing and it's nobody else in these movies did and was committed herself, so she was safe for a long time, and then as soon as she got out, she dies from an explosion. Yep.
So all of them do end with like nobody survives any of these movies.
No.
Yeah, at least the first 3 for sure.
Can I ask, does it do it like this one does, where it's like, oh, we survived like what it looks like was supposed to happen to us, but then it's just like whatever the death force is just like, all right,
usually,
cool, but I'm gonna kill you anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
So it never does like it in a way that like reaches its like like the prophesied conclusion.
Yeah.
Okay.
In this movie, originally, it was supposed to end with Ian McKinley's death with the cherry picker, and it ended like with the 3, Julie, Wendy, and Kevin walking away. And audiences really didn't care for that. So 5 months later, they filmed the subway scene, which is why in the movie it says 5 months later, which I don't know how they survived that long without death chasing them still, but that's never really explained. But yeah,
I kind of liked it, not knowing that. Like it worked for me there, but I can see how like I was a little surprised to see that this was like had some of the lower ratings of the franchise, and I feel like it must be something to do with like how this relates to the other movies.
Maybe it's not. It's a sequel in the franchise, but the only thing mentioned from the other previous two movies are the accidents, like Flight 180.
Yeah, I kind of picked up that like the flight that they talk about. That's the first movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish they would
Okay.
talk about the highway crash. I was annoyed by that. I was like, we're just talking about Flight 180, like the second one didn't happen. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so that's my initial reactions. Also, when we get to my topic, spoiler warning for the Nick Cage movie Knowing and the Adam Sandler movie Bedtime Stories. If anyone cares, like they're not good enough to like go watch spoiler free, but just for the odd fan out that might be like keeping that on a watch list.
I
Spoiler
remember the
warning.
ending of. I didn't fully see Knowing, but I remember the ending, and that I had without seeing the rest of the movie, that felt like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I'll save talking about that for when we get to my topic.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason. But yeah, I never thought that would be a movie I'd bring up, but here we are.
Are you done with your initial? Because I was just gonna
Yeah.
round out the rest. In recent years, I found the Dead Meat YouTube channel where the main content, I've mentioned them on here before. The main content is counting kills in horror media now. It was only horror movies up until the strike, so they had to cover some other things that weren't SAG affiliated. Like they started covering Mortal Kombat, which was really awesome in my opinion as a big Mortal Kombat fan. Not the biggest fan of this game out now, but kill counts in horror media. And I've watched most of the big franchise stuff. James, Chelsea, and the team have covered, like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Leatherface movies. Sorry, Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. I haven't seen all the Scream ones because I feel like I'd rather watch the Scream movies first. And James, the host. His lightheartedness as a host made it easier for me to deal with watching anything horror, and it kind of eased me into watching like certain horror movies on my own. So shouts out to him. And not this one though. I didn't watch this one on my own. I watched it with my brother. I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much if I did watch by myself. My brother and I were kind of just making fun of the movie for most of it, like how much of a dick these characters were. Like Lewis, he was like the line when Wendy's freaking out and he stands up off the roller coaster. He's like, "Hey man, why don't you get your bitch in control or whatever?"
He slapped the other girl. Oh my
He's like,
god.
"What the hell?" Oh,
There were
man.
so many points in this that it was just like such weird character actions to like just to get them where they needed to be, especially in that opening on the roller coaster.
Dude shooting the pigeon in the what's it called? The tool store.
Oh, with the nail gun?
Yeah. What's the tool store called?
Hardware store.
Hardware store. Yeah. Yeah, that was weird as hell. Yeah. So I had a better time watching this first full Final Destination movie with my brother. And yeah, I mentioned the fun fact about the subway ending being added later. But yeah, if that's it, that's all my initial stuff. That's it for initial reactions and information. We can jump into the topics. Actually, I think we'll start with the cannon fodder. Creating characters is cannon fodder topic because we were just talking about these characters in the movie. Whose topic is that?
That's mine.
Okay.
So let's go back to the 90s, children, to a time when horror was probably at its lowest, especially slashers, and nothing was good. And pretty much characters were designed to just be hated, so you would root for the killer of whatever iconic franchise to just kill them off. And the movie that kind of stopped and changed all of that was, of course, Scream, as it's known for, which is why when we watched Scream and you guys were like, these people annoy me, I was like, oh, we're in for a treat because these other characters are going to be something else then. And Final Destination lives in that lane of, I'm going to just make annoying, insufferable individuals so you just wait for the scenario to watch them die. And this film, it does that really well. I don't know if there's any character I would say I like or I would ever want to be around. I would say the closest are definitely the two girls who are in the tanning death, but like everybody else down to the main character, it's just so annoying. And you're just waiting for that moment where they die. And that's okay with me. It's okay for me to just root for death sometimes. But I was curious, because I don't really have any points here. I just wanted to have this discussion as moviegoers. Like, is that enough for you?
Yeah.
I think for this kind of movie, yes, it is.
Do you want to get into that more as an
Oh,
audience experience?
I can.
Or just
I
leave
wanted
it
to.
yes?
No,
Well,
I was gonna let
I
Evan
have
go.
more, but go ahead, Jelani. I'll get into mine later.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. I don't actively like. I know they're going to die. I don't go in actively rooting for any of the deaths, no matter how. Okay, well, I think the dude's name was Cheeky. That guy. Okay.
Oh, the
dude
guy
that
who
got
said
his-
I need to stop looking at women as fun bags.
Yeah, at the funeral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a line.
Yeah. And then he tried to lean in and kiss. Okay, that guy. Fine, but the rest, I was kind of just like, they're just assholes. I don't know if any of them deserve to die, especially in the way they do in these movies. Like, it just feels like death is getting personal with them. Like, it's wild, the setups, like how long it took that hardware store, thank you Evan, hardware store scene for that setup for the wooden stakes to come, all for the wooden stakes to come down on dude. Like, the series of events that had to happen in order for that to even work was wild. All for that to, well, Wendy ended up saving Ian, but that knocked I don't remember. I think she's the only character I don't remember by name. Do you remember the goth girl?
I don't remember any of their names. I
I'll pull it
commend you
up.
for knowing their names. I only know Lewis.
Aaron, I think.
Aaron. Yeah, the nail gun. That was.
Yeah.
I don't. She was with Ian, but I don't remember her actually saying or doing anything that made me dislike her. And she got it pretty bad because it looked like she felt most of those nails go through her skull. And that was yeah, Evan, your turn, you go.
Yeah. So for this kind of movie, I think this approach to character is fine. I mentioned this last episode. The horror movie I edited, we had a pretty decent amount of characters that were just cannon fodder, and I'd say we went like somewhat hard in the direction of like, we're going to make these people unlikable so that you cheer for their deaths. I don't think it was like all the way. There's a couple characters in it that I would say aren't like totally hateable. I didn't feel like they were trying to do that with too many people here. Like, they're all very one-dimensional, and I think there's a utility to that. Like, it is kind of cringy, but I was also able to remember everyone pretty well from very little screen time. Like, it's pretty, like, I didn't remember names for the most part, but you're like, oh, I remember that one thing that character did earlier. So in that sense, I think it's useful because there's no need to go into backstory or depth. Like, the situation they're in is what's important. So it doesn't really matter who these characters are. I think if you're going to do anything you either give us one really simple reason to be sad about their death or one really simple reason to cheer for their death. It reminded me a little bit when David, you proposed this topic. It made me think back to a couple episodes that we've done. One is Dunkirk, where we talked about how like those characters get very little specificity, they're just there for the situation. And then we covered Circle a while back, where the characters are like intentionally reduced to just a stereotype or like what they are like on paper in society, because the whole point of that movie is to examine how society treats people based on different things. So I don't think this movie really falls into I think it's closer to what Dunkirk does, I would say, where it's like the characters are simple so that we can focus on the situation. It's just doing it for a very different reason here. But for this, like, if people think it's cringy, like, I'm not saying these are necessarily well-written characters, but I think there is a reason behind it.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like, it works for me. Like, it's okay for me because to me, they're all pretty much caricatures of like some stereotype that you've seen in high school or you've seen more so portrayed in high school films. Like, you have the two hot girl bullies who are going to go be bitchy and get done at the tan salon. You have the juice head guy who's going to be a dick and hit people and go hard at the gym. You have like the emotionally unintelligent jock who's just kind of there being pointed where to go. And I'm like, I'm okay with all of that. The only one that I think, knowing because of the other two Final Destinations, I would have wanted a little bit more was from the main character. Like, I just would have wanted a little bit more to be on her side, because there are moments where like she sees her sister, she just finds out the sister's the next in line, and she sees her sister literally get into the car, and instead of like banging on the window, running outside to stop the car, she's like, let me take out my phone and leave a voicemail, and let that voicemail not tell her she's in danger, but just tell her to call me back. And I'm like, where this is a little absurd, especially selling the whole I should have done more for my boyfriend, I'm guilty.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, that's the stuff that made me annoyed by her, and I was like, just die, girl. But like everyone else, it was like, it was fun deaths.
Yeah, I think we could have done with a little bit more for the two leads, because we don't get much. And I like that when we are with them, we're mostly spending time with them just trying to figure out the mystery. Like, anytime they weren't doing that and they tried when they would talk about like their grief around like their dead classmates, I was like,
tuned out.
Mm-hmm.
I tuned out. And like, I get
lying.
why you kind of need that in there just to like give some kind of lip service to it and make them feel somewhat grounded. But like, I didn't care because this is just that's not really the language this movie speaks, I feel like
that, exactly. Like the moment after the police station and she's like talking to him about like, well, don't you think we should go together? And he's like, my dad will drive me. And then he's like, well, we don't get along. And it's like that cheeky like call back to her, and then they hug. Mm-hmm. Should you feel like, oh, because I'm just like, die already, die. Like, no one wants this, die. Like, that's terrible.
Well, I was worried that they were gonna like end up becoming a couple by the end, and I'm glad that didn't happen. I think it was mostly the era that this came out, and I was like, that feels like something they would have done.
2006.
Yeah. 2006 was pretty peak, like the era of like, we have two leads in this movie, they're gonna get together by the end because that's just what we do. I'm glad that didn't happen. I don't know if I wanted more or less of like their relationship evolving, because there's stuff at the beginning, like before they even get on the roller coaster, that I feel like doesn't really go anywhere. Like they do hang a lantern on we don't get along, and it seems like Kevin is like, I don't think we're meant to like him initially. Like, it seemed like he was somebody that was being set up as, well,
he took the photo of the upskirt photo.
Yeah, there's that, and there's like a couple lines between, I forget his girlfriend's name, but the one who dies, she says like, I'm gonna break up with him, and I thought for sure that was going to come back. I didn't really know how, and I guess it's fine that it didn't. But I was like,
no, he had the scene where he told Wendy he was going to ask her to marry him.
Yeah, well,
and
that
she just
too.
looked at
it's
him like, okay.
And especially after that happened, I was like, this is gonna go somewhere, right? Like, I'm not mad that it didn't. I just don't know why those two lines were kept in if they meant nothing, because they really seem to signal like this is setting up something for one of these characters, probably both. But I felt like there was a decent amount at the beginning that was like trying to get us to be against Kevin. I don't know if we needed that given his role.
Are either of you? I doubt Evan is, but are either of you ever going to watch 5?
Is that the one where the guy gets his butthole sucked out?
That's 4.
4? Then no, I'll watch 4.
I probably
4
not.
Yeah, for that. When my friend told me that's a death, that he gets sucked through his butthole or whatever, I was like, whoa, got to see that happen.
It's a pool thing that does it. And I'll get more into that too.
People say that happens on airplanes too. Like that's why you have to like stand up when you flush, because otherwise you're gonna get sucked through because it opens up and it just like drops out of the airplane.
I've never heard.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like true or not, but that's why I'm terrified to use an airplane bathroom.
So whatever you leave in the toilet just drops out of the airplane.
Apparently,
I don't think that can be. That can't be true.
There's like it's like a not like a filter, but I feel like there's like a storage, kind of like a porta potty type situation, except yeah.
I don't know. I think there's just enough about it that I feel like maybe now it's not the way, but there must have been some models. So they were like, hey, you can just stand up and look, and when you push, you can see it open, and then it closes. And I'm like, what?
So
nah,
people thought
that would airlines
were just raining shit down on people. Like,
yeah.
I feel like that can't be true. To answer your question, I don't think I'm ever going to watch it. I don't know that I want to watch any of these because I think my experience with this one is generally positive, but I think that might only be because it's my first one. I think the effect might wear off with the other ones.
If you do ever want to watch one, I would do 2. I feel like 2 is probably the strongest, and then just let the rest be.
So the only time I feel anything, and I'm agreeing with James's take, the YouTube channel's host, on this. The only time I feel bad about really anybody dying in this series is the ending of 5. So spoilers, you don't want to know, you somehow haven't seen any of them. Also, there's going to be a 6 coming out at some point. I think it's supposed to be a reboot. Spoilers: Final Destination 5 is a prequel.
Really?
And the 2 protagonists, they go through the whole movie, escaping death, unlike the rest of the cast. So the 4th one is a racetrack disaster. The 5th one is a bridge disaster.
Those are like the initial ones?
The premonition deaths, yeah.
Okay.
Like this one was the roller coaster. 2 weeks later, after the events of the movie, they get on flight 180 to Paris. And they see a kid freak out. One of the passengers is like, this kid freaked out about having a vision about the plane exploding. And by the time they hear that, the plane is already in the air. And the dude just looks over at the girl and is just like, no. And the wing, the wing catches the engine. One of the engines catches fire, and everything that we see from the disaster in the first movie goes off. Like a hole tears in the plane because a fuel line bursts. hole tears in the plane, sucks the girl out of the plane, and she's chopped in half by the wing. And dude, I think, is stuck in his seat and just burns alive with the rest of the people in the cabin. It's wild as shit. But yeah, I think that's the only time I feel bad, because they're in the air already. There's nothing they can do to avoid it at that point. Kind of like the ending of this movie with the subway. Like, they're on the subway, they try to pull the emergency brake, it breaks. The cord breaks. Like, it sucks. But yeah, I think that's all I had for that topic.
Yeah, I think that's everything for this. It works for us. It's all you need.
Yeah.
I do think there is like a little bit of an annoyance factor, but like you can see, I think you can equally read that as like, oh, this is annoying that these characters are all stereotypes, or you can kind of embrace the camp of it. I think it probably just depends on the viewer. I think if you know what you're in for, it reads as camp.
Yeah, I go in knowing they're gonna die. Like, I don't actively, like I said, I don't actively root for any of them to die, unless they're actively like trying to hurt somebody else in these movies, which I think happens in like one or two, maybe.
Yeah,
one or two of them. But I have a big chunky topic. If that's it for canon fodder characters, the fear of everyday life, which is the entire reason I picked this movie. As I briefly mentioned in the Nope episode, the fear of everyday life / paranoia is what made me fear these movies. It was between choosing this and The Thing for my horror episode. And I went with this because while The Thing is gross to look at, both versions, I know the 2011 one, who also has Mary Elizabeth Winstead, by the way. The 2011 one is like mainly CGI. And it's gross to look at. And it also taps into the paranoia fear thing. I think this is scarier to me because these deaths are all technically something that could happen to someone in real life. Like, I don't know if it's ever happened the way it does in these movies, but through a series of events, like crazy people have died in crazy ways. I didn't look into any of them because I don't want to read about people dying in real life. But also, in addition, what taps into the fear is there's nothing to rationalize. With the topic I had in the Nope episode, the build up to reveal, I mentioned rationalizing the movie's monster / villain when you set your eyes on it. And there's nothing to set your eyes on in this. In the first one, you see like the cheesy, they got rid of it, I think, in the other movies, but first one, you see like the shadow of death and like reflections, or you'll see like the omens where it'll be like a bus passing by through a window and you look behind you and there's no bus there, like that type of thing. But death is an invisible force in these movies coming after the characters. So
can I just ask real quick, is the wind like a remnant of that? Because there was like wind that would come through right before deaths, even like in indoor spaces sometimes.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And then the songs as well. Like the guy I don't know why he was staring at Wendy, but the guy that was singing that song, There's Someone Behind You or whatever it's called, with the guitar, and he walked off staring at her. I was just like, what the hell, dude? But yeah, the wind is reminiscent of that. Also, in the first movie, one of the characters dies by slipping on like water that comes from the toilet line, and then once he's dead, death. The only time this has happened in the movies, apparently, death covers its tracks by reverting the water back into the toilet line. Like, I don't know, like does it think he's gonna be arrested? I don't I don't understand that.
That's just so goofy. I kind of love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's really stupid.
He's committed.
So with this
It's like if
force,
a tornado brought all the houses back up.
right? Yeah, swallowed all the people up and then put the houses back together. So with this force of death, there's nothing to rationalize and there's nothing to rationalize with. Meaning, if the thing has a face or is even just living, I like to think even if there realistically isn't, like, well, I like to think your brain thinks the being may be able to be reasoned with, even just for a second. I have no scientific basis for this, obviously, but take that with a grain of salt. So what's terrifying about this movie as well, there's nothing to rationalize with. The machines, buses, tools, fires are just going to be what they are. Like they're not they have no ill will or agenda. Death does because it's the one, setting all of this up. But the what ultimately kills the characters in this series of movies, like I said, they're just going to be those objects or whatever. So if something happens where you're impaled, or many of the other ways people die in this movie, it's technically just circumstance. Like with tanning bed fires that kill the Ash girls, I'm just now realizing they're burned alive and their names are Ashley, Ashlyn.
And couldn't you just relate to them? Like they put in their headphones and they were bopping, and I was like, "That's me." Like I've never tanned before, but that's me tanning. So
I don't
sad.
need to tan. I don't relate to them. I'm good off tanning.
I've never tanned
That wasn't the
either.
relatability part. I just said I'd never tanned either.
With them,
Listening to music and bopping, like that's so relatable. I was like, "That's me." Like I've never tanned, but that's me.
sure.
Yeah,
Also, their
they
deaths
were
were kind of
dancing. They were feeling it.
their own fault. A lot of them were in this
Most of the
movie.
time, that's how it goes in this.
Yeah.
They received plenty of warnings. And yeah.
Right, like theirs almost came down to just like irresponsibility in terms of like just how to you like same and basically same with was it Lewis who
Yeah, Lewis
gets his
too.
head crushed by the shoulder machine.
Yeah, he always wins.
But yeah, the fire that ultimately kills them, it's just doing what fires do, But
Burn.
I feel like I feel like it's kind of difficult to explain. But there's something scary about looking at objects we take for granted in everyday life, as potential methods of killing. So maybe fire wasn't the best example because everyone knows fire is dangerous. But what about the weights? I know you have to be
Right.
careful in a gym, but you don't look at weights like, oh, that'll crush me. Or the flagpole that pierced the only character in the scene in the movie.
Yeah, the sister's friend.
Perry apparently was her name. Or the cherry picker that crushed Ian. Like you don't look at that and think, oh, let me not stand underneath that because that can kill me.
Or when you're at a drive-through waiting for food, you don't think a truck's gonna come hit you without being driven by anybody.
Right.
Right. Or even any of the premonition deaths, like the pole that was sticking out that chops Kevin in half. Like it was just a pole sticking out. The pole's just gonna do what poles do, bro. Like he ran he ran into it. That's on him. In other movies, the deaths are just as complicated, but just as brutal. And I had it in my notes already, David. Like the pool scene in the fourth one where the guy gets his intestines sucked out. And last note for my topic before I open up the floor. I don't ride on roller coasters, not because of this movie, but I just don't like them. But this didn't help with that that fear of that. So um, don't ride roller coasters.
Yeah, the fact that this opened with a roller coaster definitely tapped in for me because I've gone through phases with it, but there have been like long stretches of my life where I've not been great with roller coasters. Um, but mostly like as a kid, it was mostly just irrational. Like this is a scary thing. These days, like I'm pretty much fine with it. Like I don't enjoy them. I just don't like the feeling of big hills. That's not fun for me to fall like that. But like I do have a fear around like technology that's meant to keep me safe in situations like that. Like it's a question of I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but I've done a few like ropes courses where like you can be pretty high up in like trees sometimes. And I'm never afraid because of the height. It's whether I trust like the things that I'm like clipping to the wires or whatever. Like if
Mm.
the apparatus keeping me there seems solid, like I'm fine doing all of that. If I don't trust it, then it doesn't really matter. Like I can be relatively low to the ground and I'm not okay.
Mm.
And I feel like this movie kind of taps into that. Um, and just like, you mentioned it earlier, the kind of paranoia thing, it basically worked on me a little bit. Just, I mean, only in like the few minutes after watching this, but I think I had to like use some scissors to like uh, cut a tag off a shirt that I had to get some shirts for work. And I like did that right after doing this. And I was like, let me just move a little further away from like make sure I'm not going to trip on anything right now. I'm going to just be real careful about this. I'm going to like and it only lasted for like that long. But sometimes I do have like just day to day like obviously not full on premonitions, but sometimes I do find myself like imagining the worst possible outcome of a situation. Usually like with knives in kitchens is like a situation that I feel like it comes up with is just like somebody has a knife out and I'm just like,
Somebody
I don't
does
want
like
to
that in
see
the first
this.
movie. The
I mean,
one of
it's
the
a
teachers.
pretty easy way to like that's just a common everyday thing that
Mm-hmm.
most of the time is fine but could potentially be fatal and like it works like I, this isn't exactly realistic but it's grounded in it's just an everyday situation that reaches its worst possible outcome. I think you
Mm-hmm.
said like some version of that earlier, Gelati, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty simple, but it works because it's like there's nothing. In this case, there is like a fantastical force behind it, but it also just could happen.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's like that. That actually was. I was not expecting to actually have any paranoia watching this, and I did. It's like it's not really present right now, but like it works.
you're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, that paranoia still lives in me behind if I'm driving on that highway and I see those things, it's quick. It comes right back. I'm like, here we go.
I don't
Uh-oh.
even. Yeah, it even with my dad when we drive, like we don't even stay behind trucks. Like we're good.
Nope.
Um, that's I know it's a lot, but that's what I have for fear of everyday life. Um, did we want to move on to
Well, David,
Chekhov's?
did you do your notes for that?
That's pretty much my notes. Is like this one specifically, like it's the weights and the tanning and the roller coaster. I see them and I'm reminded, but I don't really get paranoid by them. The second one, I actually feel that paranoia from with the trucks and everything. Like that is so visceral to me. Like I cannot. And if my sister's driving and she's behind, because for some reason she likes to be behind semis, I'm like, no, we're gonna have to move over. We're not doing logs and we're not doing pipes today. I've always liked roller coasters. I think that's why my brother showed me this. I think he wanted to fuck me up when I was a kid. And I
Yeah.
was like, no, I still really
Wait,
like roller
nice.
coasters. But I'll always, whenever I go on a thrilling roller coaster, I'll immediately think of this. But because of how campy this movie is, like I don't get scared. I just think of how fun it is. Like when they start dying, when the camera flies and they're wraps around the thing and the shit breaks off and people are getting split. Like, I'm laughing, I'm giggling, I'm having a good time.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I feel like there's something to like, because like even as somebody who isn't always great with roller coasters, like when you're standing in line, you can watch it go 20 times with no issue. Everyone gets off the ride and nothing goes wrong. So like there's a pretty grounded reason for like this is gonna go okay. But there have been a couple times where like in the back of my head I'm like, what if something does go wrong like this? And I think it like if I had seen this movie somehow as like a 10-year-old, I probably never would have gone on another roller coaster again. Like that was probably the age I was like peak scared of them. And this would have just, I would have just noped out of every other roller coaster forever.
That makes me wonder.
Say, it keeps me from carny rides. Like, I'm cool with any ride at an amusement park that doesn't get taken down and moved around town. But like any carny that comes through, anything like that, I don't do it. I don't do it.
There's no safety regulations for that.
Nope. And I immediately think to this, and I'm like, I don't need it.
And those accidents actually happen more often at those like.
Did you see the clip from like this year of the guy who like saved the one thing from tipping over, and then other guys jumped on to hold it down? Like that ride was going over.
I think so. That I can't visualize it in my head, but I remember hearing or seeing something about that. And I think it was last year, there was like a carnival that opened up near the American Dream Mall, like in the Meadowlands near me, that there was an accident at. And I'm pretty sure some people lost their lives. Like carnivals, no. What my brother originally thought this movie it was at a carnival, but amusement parks, that's another unrealistic thing. They normally have a lot of safety regulations in place, because if not, they lose everything. So hardware stores as well, he was telling me. Though the way they died was kind of, well, death's design. It's a callback to like the first movie. Evan, you wouldn't get it. Tony Todd wasn't in this movie. He's normally the coroner that shows up after somebody dies.
His voice is in it though.
His voice is in it as the devil statue, which was made out of styrofoam, and the Dead Meat channel showed it was anatomically correct.
Good to know.
Yeah, they sculpted it. And he also voices the subway announcer at the end.
I think
I
that's
recognize
a cool
his
little
voice.
Tag on. Yeah, me too. I was like, ooh, death is here. You better get out. I am Venom.
But yeah, it's I'm good now, like watching Final Destination stuff, because I just am like, it's the way these things happen is just so not set in reality, even though it's real life objects doing it. It's the paranoia doesn't hit like it used to, which is fine with me. Is that it for Fear of Everyday Life? Everybody's notes for that.
Yeah.
Moving right along, we're keeping on course. Last topic: Chekhov's gun.
Bang bang.
Chekhov's nail gun.
Yes. So this is my topic: Chekhov's nail gun. Yeah. So for listeners who don't know, I figure both of you know this term, but Chekhov's gun is a storytelling technique which originates from Anton Chekhov's play The Seagull. So it's this implicit rule that if you show us like a gun, quote unquote, early on, it has to go off by the end. And I think most of the success of this movie is that it keeps your attention by setting up a lot of guns that it promises will go off. some of them are throughout the whole movie, and some of them are just one sequence. Like, I think the most engaging parts of this movie were, unsurprisingly, the death scenes. But the reason I was so engaged during them, I feel like it kind of goes back a little bit to what we talked about in Psycho with Hitchcock's bomb under the table thing. Like they're kind of showing us the bombs under the table. Like there are shots of the elements that are going to lead to a death sequence. So they're signaling like this is going to be a source of danger, but the way that they're dangerous doesn't become obvious until it actually happens. So we don't know how to stop it or like what way, or at least I didn't feel like anytime they showed anything in this, I was like, I
They
don't
didn't
know
either.
how that's going to lead.
I would have let
to a
death take me. They're trying way too hard.
Yeah. Well, and go ahead.
But remember, in like especially in 2, you pretty much have to wait your turn.
Yeah, it goes in its order.
Yeah, because I think the dude Eugene, I don't know why I remember his name, tried to shoot himself and the gun wouldn't go off. He tried to hang himself, and the 2 protagonists from the second movie saved him. Like, it'll find a way to make you wait your turn.
Okay, the thing Ian says is like something that the movies had addressed before, because doesn't he say that to Wendy, where he's like, if you're last in line, save all of us the trouble.
Yeah, just off yourself.
So the movies had already talked about that. Like they've already like debunked that basically.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
And David, I don't know. You would you stay for the premonition disaster, or would you escape the premonition? You said you just let that take you.
Well,
like,
in that regard, in that question, then am I the one having the premonition?
Yes.
Because if I'm having the premonition, then I would just be so anxious I would get out. But by that point, I don't know really. Like, death is this petty bitch who's going to come get me no matter what. But like, if I was forced off the ride and I've seen 3 people get murked now, I'm just going to be like, man, let me go get some food I like. Let me go watch a movie I like. See the people I love, because my time is coming. Nothing I can do about it.
What? And I
or
get
be smart
that.
like the girl from the second one and just commit yourself.
What's scary about that is it feels like you said, you called death a petty bitch. It feels like it is personal with each of these deaths after the disasters. Like they die in painful ways during the premonitions too, but even the ones after, it feels like, no, I'm gonna make you feel every piece of this as you die. Yeah, like it. Yeah.
It feels like a non-choice. Like if you have one, it's like, do you want it now or later?
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, it's not. It's you don't really have a choice in any of it's. That's what the movie is showing. You don't really have a choice in any of these situations. It's now or later. I don't remember the protagonist from the second one dying at the end. I remember a grill blew up. Now somebody else died, but I don't remember I think it was a female lead. I don't remember her dying at the end of it. And I didn't hear about her death in this movie, so maybe she made it. I doubt it.
In my mind, she's dead, but yeah, we never see it.
Yeah. Evie, you want to keep going with?
Yeah. So I think the other thing that keeps this interesting is like halfway through, and maybe this, you guys can probably let me know, maybe this is true of the other movies, the characters start figuring out how to guess the way that the people will die and trying to stop it. And I think it's really important that Ian McKinley's death gets prevented, because that gives the later deaths more tension, because now we know like maybe they can actually stop them. It's not, we're not just bracing ourselves. There is like, maybe they will and maybe they won't. So
there's like
we're
2 or
trying
3
to predict
separate deaths that happen at that tricentennial.
Yeah.
stop prevented. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like you could almost do like a back and forth. And I think that's just an important thing for tension anyway. Um there I wasn't expecting to bring this up, but one of my favorite TV shows is Silicon Valley, which oddly enough stars Amanda Crew, who plays the younger sister in this. I didn't recognize her at all, and then I saw her name on the cast right before starting. But anyway, one of my favorite things about that show is that there are so many ups and downs in it that literally everything that happens, like every action the characters take, could lead to success or failure. And there's just so much variety across that entire show that you can never really predict which way it's going to go.
So
And
there's Silicon Peaks
part
and
of that,
Silicon Valleys.
yep, it very much does. And I think part of like how that works is it's just because like there's more time in a TV show, so you get more dynamics and like you get more chances to have good and bad happen. With this, I think they do what they can with it, where like we get enough deaths to see like this is something that is like pretty much gonna happen. Like death is at least going to try to kill all of these people. But then once we see within the text of the movie that you can skip one, that I think we have that, then the second half of the movie feels less like there's less to engage you. So does that happen in the other movies where like the characters like is there something like The Pictures where they have some means of trying to predict it?
In the first movie, not as much. I don't remember the second movie, David. I think you can speak to it. In the first movie, they have it's pretty much just the person that has the premonition that knows anything. Like I said, the thing with the bus, they're like outside and he's looking through like a restaurant window and he sees a bus pass by through the window. He looks behind him, there's no bus. That's the omen. And then a few minutes later, one of the most shocking deaths I hear, the girl walks away from like the two dudes having an argument and is 1 foot off the curb, and the bus comes up out of nowhere and hits her and kills her. And again, shout out to Dead Meat. Apparently, that initially shocked audiences so much they needed to add 40 seconds of that Alka-Seltzer scene that follows to calm them like mentally, which is wild to think about. But in the first movie, dude is normally the main character, I forget his name, is normally too late to show up.
Is it Alex?
Probably.
I think so. I just know Devin Sawa plays him.
Yes. Is too late by the time, like, for example, he throws a magazine at an owl that shows up in his window. The magazine gets caught in his fan and a single piece of the magazine paper lands on his leg and it says Todd, which is the name of his friend. By the time he shows up to Todd's house, Todd was hung in his own bathroom. That's how it happens in the first movie. He figures out the order. He's given the order because
it's by the seat numbers, right?
Yeah, well, there's like a newscast that shows somehow the path of destruction through the fuel line. And it shows the explosions, and he matches it up to the seats, and he figures out who's next, but he doesn't know how. In the second one, I don't remember if they really had. They probably did, but I don't remember how.
The closest they do is like once they meet up with the girl from the first one who survived and she like breaks it down what's happening, then like her and the premonition girl kind of like try to figure out everyone who she saw who hasn't died yet, and then she tries to like group them all together.
The elevator one is pretty brutal in that one. strangely enough, I was gonna say, strangely enough, this wouldn't be a topic in the first two movies, and then I rewatched the kill count. But I think the characters normally visually don't have anything to go off of, but they added the pictures in this that makes it so, especially because it's not really connected to the first two, makes it easier for them to figure out what's next and who's next.
Yeah, and I got indications, maybe you guys can confirm this from like a couple of reviews that I read. Like this movie seems to kind of skip through some of the like earlier stuff where like it kind of assumes that you know what the franchise is about more than the other two. I didn't feel lost because of that. Like it felt like it was pretty easy to jump on board, but I saw other people saying that.
Yeah, I feel like that's accurate.
Yeah, I feel like it's pretty easy to explain, even in the movies itself. Like, yeah.
Okay. I kind of like that where it's just I feel like I recently watched this is a completely different movie, but Palm Springs is a time loop movie that I feel like just it was so refreshing how it just assumes that you know what a time loop movie is and how it works. And I feel like that's just nice where it doesn't have to explain what's happening in like to a first timer. And I think this movie benefits from that probably because I never felt like it was slowing down too much. But again,
like
even
how
as this being my first one, I didn't feel lost ever. I didn't feel like it was moving too fast.
it's kind of like how Spider-Verse expects you to know who Spider-Man is.
Yeah. Yeah, it does like it gets it out of the way like as quick as possible. That's probably like the GOAT version of like giving newbies what they yeah. But like giving newbies what they need and not like dragging returning people through something they've already seen.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys have more notes for this? I only have one more to just compare to the two movies that I mentioned at the beginning. But
not really. I just completely agree. Like this whole franchise works off Chekhov's guns, and if they didn't have that, I feel like it would just they really would be nothing. Like you need the Chekhov gun to pull you in, and then you need the spectacle of the death to have that moment, and then that's like this how this franchise has made its money, and it's made a lot of money.
There's a 6. I mean, I think the 6 was announced a few years ago, but I saw an update, and the most recent update was on IMDb, October 26th of this year, that 6 is going to be a reboot. So I don't know why they're naming it 6, but
I don't see why you'd have to reboot it because it seems like you can just kind of do this
make these forever
whenever. Like there's no continuity. You could set this in like I don't know the 1700s.
That's what people have said for the longest time is like take it back and do
period. That'd be wild.
Final Destinations and like kind of explore like that one show. I forget what the show's called where they like Mythbusters it like go and look through things and like actually like play with it that way. It would be like so much fun.
That would be wild.
It's just kind of blowing my mind right now that you just said Mythbusters because I feel like there is so much Mythbusters energy in this now that you said that. Like it does feel like it's tapping into like their exact same kind of ethos. Like
I feel that.
This feels like the most Mythbusters fodder movie ever.
I think the Dead Me YouTube channel, he mentions Mythbusters when the plane explodes in the first one, and it shatters the windows of the airport. He was like, I want that myth busted because I don't know if the explosion from the plane way out there would shatter the windows. I just think it's funny you guys mentioned Mythbusters too.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't seen much of them in a while, but I feel like they often do movie examples where they're like, is this scene accurate at all? So this feels like I don't know which one would be most likely or like the best one from this movie to do. But because it, in a certain sense, it's like, yeah, if every single one of these things happened, then yes, that would be the outcome. But like, it's also just
How would
kind
that
of
happen?
right. Like it's almost more of a probability thing than
Mhm.
like it's not really based in like the science of could this happen. It's like what insane odds are there that this one specific outcome could ever actually happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Like the
yeah,
engine not being strapped down in the car and coming out past another car into a dude's head with the fan rotating. Like, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like it's like just super implausible or
Or a drive
improbable.
through being at the bottom of a hill. I've never seen
I
that.
mean, that could just happen. Like there's plenty of those.
You
But
name,
it
give
is
me one.
it's all very circumstantial is the thing. Like and
Yeah.
very specific. So I just wanted to compare quickly to the other two movies I thought of that kind of use a similar technique to this. So Knowing is a Nick Cage movie where he like finds this code for a bunch of disasters, and I thought of it while watching this because it also does like 9/11 as part of its canon, where like it I think it shows like the date and the number of people who died, and I want to say it's latitude and longitude, and that's like the first one he looks up. um and then there's like I think there's one other, maybe two other disasters that he witnesses, but he can't do anything to stop them ultimately, kind of like this movie. And then spoilers, but the movie ends with just the whole world ending. Like I think the sun expands and like just burns the whole earth. um but it also it's like kind of using this narrative device of like we have it's almost like a prophecy. um in a similar, like it's a similar thing to that, where it's like this thing is gonna happen and the character is gonna try to stop it. Do they have any power in this situation?
Technically,
um
in that movie, isn't it God doing all of that? Because, spoilers, angels show up at the end and take the main character's kids
oh
to another.
yeah,
Like,
I
what?
forgot about that. It's been so long since I saw that movie. I totally forgot that that happened until you just said it.
You still with us, David?
Sounds kind of wild.
Yeah.
It's
It was like, what the hell? This is a disaster movie. Okay, he knows it's gonna happen. Oh, okay, angels exist, and they're gonna take your children to a different planet or realm of existence, and it's a new Eden. What?
Okay.
I can't believe like that's all coming back to me. I totally forgot that part of the
I love the
ending.
designs of the angels in that. They look cool as hell. But also, what?
Yeah, it goes like so off because like I feel like it started out fairly grounded, and then like I know the part I do remember is like they just the last like thing on the list of disasters is just EE, and then eventually I think he goes and like finds some room where it just has everyone else written on it, and like
Wow.
that was what ends up coming true. I feel like at that point, like that's when the movie just gets so goofy. Also,
Yeah.
Nick Cage is in it,
Look up
so
knowing
like
angels.
These images are weird.
yeah, I'll find that after
That's
because I
wild.
remember it, but I'm not remembering what they look like. I remember the kid. I think the little girl holds like a rabbit at the
She's
end
holding bunnies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and says something weird about the rabbit.
It's kind of like the
Uh,
Ark, I guess. No?
It's
Yeah.
weird.
I
like
don't know.
Noah's
Oh,
Ark.
oh yeah, because she brings two bunnies. Yeah, she's holding two bunnies. You can
It's
bring
the
two
two
of each.
kids. I think there were other kids too that were also taken, which is kind of weird to think that they meant to repopulate the. Ew. Why?
Yeah,
Why not just kill everybody
it's.
on the planet? Just
I
there's
don't.
been movies that do that.
I mean, I don't want to say I remember it well because I forgot that that was there, but I don't think there was like any explanation for it by the end. It was just like it got super weird. Um, But anyway, that's another movie that uses this technique and also just kind of ends with, yep, death is inescapable. But they give a
So
little
is
more like of a
spoilers.
face to it.
So is Don't Look Up.
Oh yeah, that too.
I don't
But
like
I
when
feel like Don't
it
Look
makes
Up
me feel.
isn't using that technique really.
No, 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 not at all. But I'm just saying I don't really like when movies end. Everybody does, and they're just hugging each other as the world ends. That's kind of just not disappointing, but it just leaves a feeling of emptiness. Like, damn, okay, now what? Everybody died.
Yeah, I only like that those movies exist in a meta sense. Like I felt very conflicted about Don't Look Up afterward because like I feel like that is very purposeful in Don't Look Up,
Mm.
but I like that those movies exist on a meta level just because like when you're watching something else, it can be like, okay, like a movie has done this, so maybe it's gonna pull a Don't Look Up or a Knowing. Um,
David, what are you
I don't think
looking at?
anyone really thinks of Knowing
The
like that,
Knowing or
but
Knowing.
yeah.
Roger Ebert gave it 4 out of 4, saying it's one of the best science fiction films he's ever seen. Frightening, suspenseful, intelligent, when it needs to be, rather awesome, with expert and confident storytelling that strings together events that keep tension at a high pitch all throughout the film. Even a few quiet human moments have something coiling beneath. Pluck this movie and it vibrates. Damn. So that's when he
Can't
lost his
say I
taste.
agree, but I last saw that when I was like 14, so I don't trust my memory of it that well.
Yeah, they're
Um,
on the arc.
I confused Knowing with the other Nick Cage one. Is it Next, where he like sends out possible versions of himself mentally?
I don't know. I think there is a
I
Nick
think it's
Cage movie
Next.
called Next. I don't know anything about it. There's also Left Behind, which I think is supposed to be like the rapture, where like all the good people get taken to heaven and then everyone else is just fending for themselves on Earth or something.
Mm.
Um, I don't know
I
if
think
that's
it's
similar.
I think it's Next. He sends out like a mental projection of himself and sees like the possible ways of how something can happen. I think the climax is like him sending out versions of himself and seeing himself get shot by. I don't know. I've never fully seen that either.
Okay,
Would you
I
recommend
can't really
Knowing, Evan?
comment.
Because Roger Ebert did.
I can't really like. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's terrible. My memory of it is clearly not good enough to really give a strong recommendation. I just remembered that it's another movie that uses this technique. And then the other one, just to finish out, Bedtime Stories, the Adam Sandler movie. He has like he tells stories to his niece and nephew, and then the next day, like that, what he tells them in the story, and eventually, I think you find out it's what they like his niece and nephew add to the story, determine what's going to happen to him, and it's like I feel like it's much stronger breadcrumbs than we get in this movie, but it's still, to my memory, is not enough where you can like predict how it's going to happen. But it, what was I think the moment that I was reminded of it is at the end of this movie when they're at like the county fair and um Kevin's like trying to avoid all like the bright lights and the fireworks. There's an like almost identical moment like that in Bedtime Stories, and I was like, oh, I guess that kind of ripped off Final Destination as well. Like it's playing with that exact same thing of like, I know this thing is probably going to happen, and like the characters adjusting themselves. So it's using that like same tension. Um, I don't want to like compare them too hard, but I feel like this movie has like just its audience calculation and like it kind of has a defter hand with it here where it's balancing like giving us the right amount of information, enough to keep us tense but not enough that we're predicting, like we're guessing, we're trying to predict, but it's not enough, like it's keeping us invested. personally, I was like, that's what I was most impressed with and what kept me hooked the whole time. Even if I wouldn't like call this anything masterful, I can't deny that like they made that part work, and I have a level of admiration for that.
This is cinema.
They knowing or this?
It's a form of it.
No, this is cinema. This is peak cinema. Are you kidding? They said this is Abe Lincoln.
I'm glad we picked this movie because like I feel like horror is a genre that's known for not being terribly high art most of the time, and this would kind of fall on the lower art end of the spectrum, certainly compared to Nope, and I assume probably compared to The Exorcist.
Yeah, The Exorcist is like the highest of art horror film. Like A24 lives in the veins that Exorcist built.
Yeah, and I think elevated horror has certainly seen a resurgence post Get Out. And like we've covered a few of those movies, or at least mentioned them. And I don't know. I think I like that in this horror cycle we covered one that's a little bit considered on the trashier side, because like
not even a little bit. There's
like, stuff that works
Final
here.
Destination is known as the trashy stuff, but it's why you love it. It's like the junk food candy of horror. Like you just come here for the good times.
Same with most
and it feels
right? Except Scream.
Most slasher sequels, but usually the first ones there's some substance to. Like the first Halloween, there's substance. The first Nightmare, substance. The first Friday there isn't substance, but that's because the creators were like, we ripped off Halloween, and they're like so unapologetic about it, and I love it. I think that's so awesome. They're like, it made a lot of money, and we wanted to make a lot of money, so we did it for cheaper.
Yeah, but I think even with like I can't speak to the slasher movies, but like even though we would probably call this trash, and I don't even really want to argue with that assessment, like there's a craft here that I think can still be appreciated.
Like me and Jelani were just talking about how hard it is to make a bad movie over text. Like this isn't like people just like shout it out, but like it's made to be kind of trashy junk food movie for the fun time.
Mm-hmm. And I don't even think that like the parts that work with this are not like them going for like so bad it's good. It's like there's just like cheesy dialogue here, but there's also scenes that are like, yeah, that works. You got me. I'm paranoid now. I can't deny that like you did something right. Even if there's some really stupid lines in this movie.
Oh, they're so funny though.
I know, it's so bad.
They're so funny.
I think the one that stood out to me the most was like, how do you know SpongeBob lives under the sea?
Oh yeah.
That's so
she was like,
would anyone in 2006
it's really sad that you know that, or whatever she said. He was like, SpongeBob lives underwater, and she's like,
she said that's really embarrassing. You know that. Me and my friends laughed with that. We were like, that's literally the song.
And it's literally the one thing you would know about it. It's the first line.
Exactly. That's what my friend said. Like, it's literally SpongeBob SquarePants lives in a pineapple under the sea. But she roasted his ass for it. And same thing, just like when he was like, can I have the camera back? And she was like, why? It's a school camera. And he was like, are there pictures of my ass on it? And I'm like, what? What is happening? What did you do with your camera that there's something like that on your school camera? That's crazy.
Yeah. I don't think there's any argument for this as high art. But that doesn't mean
just trying to be a
value
good time.
to it. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's the end of my notes.
And so it's the end of the episode then, because we're out of topics, out of notes, and we are out of time.
Oh, that's gonna come for us.
Okay. Yep.
Comes for us all.
Can't wait to find out how. So our next episode is going to be The Exorcist. Sorry, how else did you want me to transition there?
I'm probably gonna watch that with my brother too. I don't want to watch Exorcist. Is probably gonna.
I can't wait to talk about this movie.
Oh no.
I'm excited to see it. The Exorcist has been a blind spot for me. I mean, obviously forever because I've never seen it, but I've been meaning to get to it for a while, and Of course, this is the best way to get me to watch something, is make us talk about it. We have our YouTube channel. Our video on the rating system is out now. So you can go take a look at that. We have our Patreon for $1 a month with bonus episodes and watch-alongs. Our logo is by Kelsey Hendry. I'm on Letterboxd at Ev_Wes. And where are both of you? David, I cannot wait for your location in this one.
I am on Instagram at Jelani T. Kelly and YouTube the same thing.
Yeah, I feel like I would have to be in the tanning salon. Like I'd have to be in the tanning beds with them. I'd have to be the tanning beds. I feel like I would have to be yeah, they're the best. They carry that movie.
I was gonna say that or the roller coaster. Like where else would you be?
Right.
Hardware store or the subway.
I didn't like the emo couple.
Or
I forgot
on the
the emo
horse at the
couple
county
was even
fair.
in the movie.
They didn't. I thought Ian was gonna be. I thought he had a gun, and like I thought he was gonna threaten to shoot them. I remember him having a gun for whatever reason.
And the way they have him walk up, and you can't see his hands, like they're really selling that. And he's like, he causes my death. It's like, okay. But yeah, here's the line before we leave. Kevin says, "Is it bad? Is it embarrassing? I mean, there's nothing like up my ass in there."
Oh, that's the one you were talking about.
such great dialogue.
Yeah, this movie just bleeds 2000s. Like, I know we've talked about a couple movies. I think iRobot was another one we were like, oh, this is so 2000s. God, this movie like just has such intense mid 2000s energy.
Also, did you know that the actress that plays Ashley, the blonde one, played the little girl in the It miniseries? The one that gets
the first one.
The one that gets the series kicked off. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. That's fun.
Shout out to Dead Meat James for that fun fact. He normally tells the viewers what else the actors in the movie he's discussing, what other horror movies they've been in.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So if that's everything, thanks for watching.
Yeah.
And we'll be showing our faces every day from now on. Every video. Get used to it.
See you guys next time.
Peace.